Jana Duggar shares very shocking news about her single life. Jana Duggar finally leaves parents' home. Was there a falling out, or did Jim Bob approve the move in January of 2023? Jana Duggar, along with her twin brother John David, celebrated her 33rd birthday. Jana and John David have a lot in common, but unlike the rest of her many siblings, Jana has chosen to remain single, rather than marrying and starting a family at a young age. Obviously, 33 is not old by any means, but Duggar women are raised to believe that procreation is their primary reason for being. So with the simple act of staying single, Jana is implicitly rejecting one of her parents' most strongly held beliefs. And since Duggar women generally aren't permitted to leave home until they're married, Jana remained under her parents' roof until she was in her 30s. Contrary to popular belief, however, it seems that Jana is not still living her Jim, Bob, and Michelle or sharing a room with her youngest sisters, as she did for most of her life. But she hasn't flown very far from the nest, either. Earlier this week, we learned that Jana has moved out of her parents' house. In fact, it seems that she took her leave of them quite some time ago. Word of the long-awaited exodus comes to us courtesy of Katie Joy of the Without a Crystal Ball vlog, who says one of Jana's brothers recently spoke with her on condition of anonymity. That's funny. Jana moved out 2 years ago, the unidentified brother remarked when Joy asked about his eldest sister's living situation. But before you get too excited, it seems that Jana is still on her parents' property and presumably under their thumb. Jana moved into a tiny house behind the big house on their property. She hasn't really moved out, she just has her own space, a source close to the situation told Joy. Anyone that claims Jana moved out is lying. It's hardly moving out when you live on your dad's property in a tiny house, the source added. In the Duggar-centric corners of the internet, there's been much speculation in regard to how Jinger's overbearing father might feel about her decision to leave the nest. If we had to guess, we'd say he's perfectly fine with it. In fact, the compromise was probably his idea. This way, Jim Bob gets to grant his adult daughter a modicum of personal freedom while still using her as a source of free labor. Jana is still a caretaker and homeschool teacher to her youngest siblings, which is probably a round-the-clock gig. So you can be certain that Jim Bob would not be supportive if Jana were to leave the family property entirely. He might support such a move if she were to get married, but only if one of her younger sisters was old enough to assume the role of family nanny. Jana's move isn't entirely unprecedented, as unmarried Duggars have lived on their own before. Jed James and Jason Duggar all set out on their own shortly after they turned 18. But women are treated very differently in the Duggars world, and Jana is the first female of her generation to embark on her own path without a ring on her finger. You can be sure that Jim Bob isn't crazy about the idea of his eldest daughter remaining single. However, the idea of a free tutor and housekeeper living on his property probably appeals to him greatly.